special summoning monsters that win you the game. Who gives a fuck? That's probably the best evaluation I could give this card without seeing the entire puzzle.
Final answer. Well, Return from the Different Dimension was legal at the same time as Dark Arm Dragon, which is why I sort of hinted in that direction.
For sure.
And it was not legal at the same time as Cosmic Dark Destroyer because it is, in fact, banned. You're correct. You're correct. Anytime like a card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Says special summon as many monsters as possible, it's probably, it's not even just for Yu-Gi-Oh! For any card, right? It's probably just, like, insane. So...
See, it's weird because, like, in Hearthstone, like, there's been a lot of effects that do this, but they don't feel like...
You also have Summoning Sickness.
Yeah, we have...
In our game, we don't.
Yeah, it's, like, that's the bigger thing. We also, like, the bigger... I think the most important difference between our games is, like, a lot of the really powerful effects in Hearthstone are Battlecry effects. So, like, they don't just get to do their effect because they got special summon. Like, they need to come from your hand to do that effect. And I think...
I'd
imagine that would be the point of the Bureau.
Now, I refer to, like, a bunch of stats just in Big Meatball. Like, in Hearthstone... Big meatballs are often not enough for you to carry out a game. Like, they would have to do something insanely powerful when they're added. So, like, that's why I just don't think it's that good. Because in Hearthstone, unlike in Magic, you can pick your blockers in Magic. In Hearthstone, like, if you have a bunch of big boys and they're not, like, taunted, like, you just fucking go around them. Who gives a shit? Like, and if you
makes sense.
If you couldn't kill them there, you're probably gonna lose the game anyways. But that's just because you couldn't deal with the stats regardless. Where Yu-Gi-Oh, like, you have so many cards that's just like, oh, once per turn, activate this effect, just fuck your guy you're across the table, and you win the game.
Pretty much, yes. That's how the game works. Yeah, Return was, Dad Return was literally the name of the deck, and it was, I basically just lined it out for you, where it's, you summon a deck.
Dad Return.
Call back, win the game immediately. It's the name of the format, and, yeah.
Are you here to see Michi? Feel free to take the time to look at the new supplies.
Yeah, you have to set it first.
Yeah, so you would set... Okay, so, like, this is, like...
It's you, like, turn before, set, return, like, maybe do something past. Next turn, if return's still on the field, like, do some stuff. Special summon Dad, banish 3 guys, activate return, bring them all back, just kill you.
So, in this case, I gotta stop thinking that your card game has, like, Summoning Sickness. I keep thinking, like, stats are not irrelevant because your monster's gonna die before you swing. But, like, that's obviously not the case. Like, if you got to set this and your opponent doesn't interact with your backload row, like, you just fuck them up with stats. Like, this is one of the particular cases where stats are really relevant.
So you think having Summoning Sickness would make a difference for this, is what you're saying?
Not Yu-Gi-Oh! No.
Oh, okay. Just curious.
Like, I'll give you the inverse of this. Like, if you gave me this card and you said every monster or any creature I summon from this in Hearthstone had charged, it would be fucking broken. Like, you would play this deck. You play this card in a lot of different decks. If you could, I don't know what it would get, but because they have Summoning Sickness and your opponent gets to react, it's infinitely different.
Well, that's why Dark Arm Dragon paired so well with it, because Dark Arm Dragon clears their field with monsters and back row potentially. Then you flip return, bring everything back, and it's safe because now they don't have a board. Yeah, you can just kill them, and they have no way to respond.
That makes a lot of sense.
All right, only a couple left.
That grass looks greener. Okay. If you have more cards in your deck than your opponent does, send cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard so you have the same number of cards in your opponent. We really have to go do this. This is not just also just fun. What is this? Tell me what you're thinking. Send cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard so you have the same number of cards in the deck as your opponent. I would imagine going second, this is like fucking insane, depending on what your opponent does. Going first, I'm not sure, but I think you're willing to take that risk. Hold on, if your opponent has more cards in your deck, because like you like we've gone through this enough. Like you want cards in your graveyard, so then if you want cards in your graveyard, this seems like it's a clue. Because like okay, yeah, like maybe this card. Hold on, I do have like there is like an asterisk. If this card theoretically does nothing if your opponent has more cards than you. But there are cards that you have shown me that does interact with your opponent's deck. And there's enough cards in this game, I feel like that your opponent would want to draw cards and like remove cards from their deck that you'd be okay with this. I guess it really comes down to how often is this card doing nothing compared to how often is this card just winning you the game. Is it enough to get big?
I don't know. You tell us. Oh my god.
In Hearthstone, I wouldn't want this. There's no reason. Magic.
By living this lie.
Do like stuff in your graveyard.
Knowing
I don't
what
know
you're
evaluate this, to be honest. I think it's good. Second, going second, you're like you're probably okay.
What's our
Your opponent knows you're
next
from this, though, which again, it adds like this strange mini game. It's like your opponent doesn't want to. So in that logic, you probably don't want
don't
a
have
card
much
like this
to
to exist in your
contribute
game
on
because of
that
how it makes your opponent
I'll
play.
count
Because like
on you
then they have to
guys.
again. It's like the chicken and game of chicken. Like, do you go or do I go? Like, what? It's like reverse Maxi, bro. This is
That's a way for it to describe the
it's a
shirt.
stretch. Would reverse Maxi be banned? I mean, Maxi's legal, so how would this be? Sending cards.
Maxi's legal in Master, but you're right, it's banned from PlayStation.
So just so I am clear, if you have less cards than your opponent, this card fundamentally does nothing. It is just in your hand.
Correct. I actually don't even think you can activate this card if that is the case. Because it says if you have more cards in your deck than your opponent does, that is the activation condition. So I don't think you can activate this card at all. It just stays in your hand.
In other words, the only thing that this card would be useful for is like discarding.
Yeah, or like setting it to maybe try and get your opponent to like destroy it and like change something. Yeah, basically. Yeah.
So this one's so dumb. This one is insane. So I guess the question comes down to is the potential high of this card is better than having like a dead card in your hand. In a game like Yu-Gi-Oh, I don't know if that's the case. This could be game winning. Like if this is a game winning card if you have less cards than your opponent. If you're trying to get cards in your graveyard, this is theoretically drawing those cards and just adding them to your graveyard without actually drawing a card, which I feel like you would be okay as long as the cards in your deck want to be in the graveyard. But also, okay, I wouldn't say this is banned because I do think there are enough cards in Yu-Gi-Oh where you can interact with your opponent's deck to make this card usable. Like I feel like there is a whole context that I'm missing that allows this card to be insane. And obviously I don't know what those cards would look like, but this is an easy card for you to just do disgusting things with if the other cards are available. So I'll go with this fan.
Let me see if I can help you with that context. Do you know what Yu-Gi-Oh's deck size is?
60. 40? 60.
No.
40. 60. What is it? What are those three?
Yu-Gi-Oh, I think, is a unique game where our minimum deck size is 40 and the maximum is 60.
Oh, okay. Alright. So there's not I guess that's a great question to ask. So you're saying you would do a 60 card deck minimum. Okay, so now we go into the extra layer of five-headedness of card deck. Where most people are going to build a deck with 40 cards, because consistently speaking, that is the best way to find your win condition as fast as possible. In Hearthstone, 30 cards, if I can run a 20 card deck, I absolutely would. It's the same logic in Yu-Gi-Oh! So most people are running a 40 card deck, which means backgrass look screener probably is going to be usable majority of the time, unless your opponent is doing the exact same strategy. Then at that point, that just speaks to how good the actual deck actually was, and then Konami wouldn't want that. So I'm going to go with it's 100% good.
So, for all the reasons you aforementioned, you are correct. So, Brass was really funny because exactly what you figured out is what happened. So, when this card was printed, it actually fundamentally changed deck building. And so, all these decks that would otherwise be 40-card decks, maybe 41, 42, all of a sudden are now 60-card decks because they had the ability to play 3 copies of that Grasslook Screener. There were also cards to search that Grasslook Screener, Left Arm Offering, I think there was like maybe one other card I'm forgetting, but there's also draw cards too that you could like sort of thin your 60-card deck to maybe find grass, because we call these grass decks, and essentially, if you were able to resolve grass, you would basically win the game because you would mill 20, if not more cards most of the time. And as you know, the graveyard is essentially a second hand in Yu-Gi-Oh! So you basically just get like a third of your deck into the graveyard, which means you're probably going to trigger like, anywhere from 6 to 8 cards that have some graveyard-based ability, and you're probably just going to win the game because you activate this card as a result. So what people did to counteract this was that they also made 60-card decks, whether or not they were playing grass, because they didn't want their opponent to grass them, so they also played a 60-card deck, which may have arguably been more inconsistent, but it was a way to counter the grass deck, so everyone was playing with 60-card decks for a very short period of time. And eventually they banned the card. I think it's legal in Master Duel and the OCG at like 1 copy, but I'm not 100% sure. But it's still banned for us TCG players. But it's cool that a card like this like fundamentally changed how people deck build, and I think that's really, even though the card's like insane.
You said they banned this card because of the way it played? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because as soon if Brass resolved with a 60-card deck versus a 40-card deck, that was just a non-game. There was no way the 40-card deck was going to be able to compete because the amount of advantage improved from milling 20 cards from your deck was insurmountable most of the time. It was just an auto win. So people, if they had any way to interact with grass, they would try to hold that negation. Like Ash Blossom, for instance. Ash Blossom could stop that grass. So if people had Ash Moss, if they're going up against a grass deck, they would try to hold Ash until grass hit the field, was activated, because then that might give them a chance to actually win the game. Because if they mill 20, the game is just over. There's no way coming back from that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Alright, activate only when your opponent has 4 more cards in their hand. Look at your opponent's hand, that select 1 monster card in it, and return that card to the owner's deck. Oh shit. Okay, so if your opponent goes sacrifice into like a minion they want, or monster they want to summon, you could activate this card and then you could just send that monster right back. So probably the play pattern you're going for. If it's a special summon monster from the extra deck, that monster also goes back to the extra deck.
Well, you're taking a monster out of their hand.
Sorry, you're right. Oh, sorry, I'm fucking reading this card wrong. Oh my god. Your opponent has 4 more cards in their hand. Look at your opponent's hand. Select one monster card. Hey, that's where my logic was going. Sorry. So if your opponent goes sacrifice, you could flip this card, and the monster that they want to sacrifice, you can do that preemptively before the monster actually hits the board and send that monster to your opponent's deck. Does that make sense?
Oh, I see what you mean. So if they play cards on the field, and like you can read that there might be playing some specific card in response to flip Dust Shoot before they summon that card.
Yes. You have the time to
yeah, that's a way you can.
Based on how you react to that, that's not how this card would actually get played. So now I gotta think about how you actually want to play this. I guess you could just flip it and see what's in your opponent's hand. And then you're at a disadvantage, I guess, if they add a specific. So maybe the one
Nightmare actually has normal monsters.
specific monster you
Their effect monsters. I thought they were all just links.
Yet that monster is no longer in their hand. So you send that monster back to their deck, and then their whole game plan's fucked. That's obviously very good. Like stopping. That's good. If I'm a player in Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm about to play my deck. I'm gonna cast this, and my opponent doesn't use.
What a board! What are they gonna do here?
That's not the same thing as just counterspelling. I don't think counterspelling would be banned in Yu-Gi-Oh. Either I'm missing something entirely, or this card's just fine. By fine, I mean probably just good. That seems fun. You get to see your opponent's hand. You get to send one monster card back. If they have no monster card, I guess you get the knowledge of. And I guess if they do use resources to special something, you could use that like preemptively to stop them from doing that. Okay. I'm not happy that this roll. I'm really. So again, if they only have 3 cards.
Activating Maxi on your own turn?
Like
Who does that?
I don't know. You might have got me here. I'm gonna be honest. This one's so strange. Is there anything like this in Hearthstone?
You could have activated this sooner and you'd have stood more of a chance.
You're right. But I'm trying to think if like there's anything that would be close to it. There's cards that like when they're added to the battlefield, you do stuff to it, which is, but like the effect still blocks. There's a card called, I want to call it
Well, it's Jover.
I can't remember what it is. It was a secret when your opponent plays. You put that minion in a sack, and it's on your side of the board as a 0.
It's straight up just Jover.
Goes into a sack.
Yeah, that card's not played though because the battle cry would still go off. And like most of the time you're playing minions, it's because of the effect that it plays from your hand. Like, yeah, you lost the stat.
Player 2
like
genuinely just sucks.
It wasn't very good. And I just don't see, like in Hearthstone I want this. I guess in Hearthstone, like you draw so often in Hearthstone now, like maybe an older Hearthstone. It seems like a pretty old card. In older Hearthstone, a lot of things would come down to like being like a top deck war. You're spending 1 card to send a card back to your opponent's hand, so you're both -1 card. But you also get the knowledge of seeing what's in your opponent's hand, so you can play around preemptively with others.
It could also be that they only got Max C on their turn draw.
I can tell. You're like right up to the mic like this.
I'm going through every simulation. I don't want to get it wrong because I'm going to hold myself accountable for like 100% if I do get everything right.
Same as the Dark Destroyer.
I'm legally like not counting that.
You're making the rules now. You're making the rules.
The comments will say I got that 100%. But my word, sure.
Oh, great. That's Code Talkers here too.
I don't think this is bad. I can't see it. I think it's fine.
Finally. So Trap Dust Shoot is a very fun card, because there are cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! That are banned. You saw Confiscation in our very first video. Pay 1,000 life points, look at your opponent's hand, rip a card. That's banned. There's the Forceful Sentry. Look at your opponent's hand, take any card, shuffle it back into the deck. That's banned. There's the Liquid Duo. Pay 1,000 life points, randomly rip a card out of your opponent's hand, and they also discard a card. That's banned. So, as you can see, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a history of banning hand destruction cards.
Yeah, wow, that's
So, not too long after all these cards comes along Trap Dust Shoot. And Trap Dust Shoot has a quite hefty activation requirement of your opponent having 4 or more cards in hand. And you correctly identified that ideally you would kind of want to see this in your opening hand because your opponent is going to, draw the 6 cards at the start of their first turn. So it's going to be live, assuming you see it in the early game. The later the game goes on, you're going to be trading resources, you might get into a top deck situation, this card becomes a terrible top deck. However, in Yu-Gi-Oh! Hand knowledge is so good.
I have trap cards and voiceless angels. I think I should display that instead.
Even with all of the specific aspects of this card, your opponent has to have 4 more cards in hand. You can only pick a monster, where with Confiscation and Forceful Sentry, you can pick any card. And it shuffles it back into the deck instead of sending it to the graveyard like with Confiscation. So hypothetically, they could see it again later in the game, especially if it's a card that might be in multiple copies. Trap Dust Shoot is in fact banned, and is still banned to this very day.
Oh my god. I don't know, my Hearthstone brain...
Isn't that unbelievable? Isn't that crazy?
My Hearthstone brain says that's not correct. I don't know. It doesn't feel ban-worthy, and even after you say that out loud, it feels even worse that it's banned.
So for context, in Edison...
If it wasn't banned, it would be in everyone's side deck, man.
And even in that format, people would argue Dust Shoot is one of the top 5 cards in all of Edison. Because if your opponent starts the game with Dust Shooting you, they're going to win the game, because they know everything to play around, they know every single card you have. The game is still going to progress. There's still a couple turns, but because they know every single card, except like the next 1 or 2 draws you might do, it doesn't matter. They're going to be able to play around everything perfectly, and at that point, a lot of games with Dust Shoot ultimately become non-games. The amount of games you win just by activating Dust Shoot versus lose is like 90-10. It is absolutely just backbreakingly unfair when it comes to hand knowledge.
So if it's in your opening hand, the card is just that good that they want to.
If you're going second, like, you maybe don't want to have Dust Shoot, you might want to have a better side deck card, because if you're not going first, Dust Shoot's not as good. But if you just see this on first turn, and Edison specifically is slow enough that the game might go long enough that Trap Dust Shoot might live later on in the game. Where with modern Yu-Gi-Oh! That might not be the case, because people just kind of spend all their resources really quickly and don't really have like, a lot in their hand after the first turn. So maybe by modern standards, Dust Shoot would be okay, but I doubt it, because there's... if you remember, I showed you that Appointer of the Red Lotus card a while ago, that really ugly, like, red guy with the finger. Right. That was basically another version of Dust Shoot, and that also got banned. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Basically just kind of is... They've kind of taken a firm stance against hand destruction or hand knowledge type cards, because it's just too valuable to have that knowledge. I think Trap Dust Shoot didn't even, like, disrupt the hand, that it would probably still be too good, just because you can see your opponent's hand and know how to play around.
That's so...
The fact that it's a 1-for-1 is still really good, but I think hand knowledge is just that valuable in Yu-Gi-Oh! That I wouldn't be surprised if they printed a card that says, like, look at your opponent's hand and it's a -1 and people would still play. It's just it's too good of a mechanic.
It's strange, though, because I think in Hearthstone, like, hand knowledge has never been good enough for me to be like...
But your games go on quite long. So, like, if I hit your hand turn 1, you still have to get to, like, turn 7, 8, 9. You're going to see another however many cards.
Which is completely fair. I get what you mean. I get what you mean. Okay, well, fair enough.
Last card.
Chaos Emperor Dragon and
They're smart.
Of the End? What a fucking title.
Sick name,
what a title to have, bro. Holy shit. This card cannot be normal summoned or set. This card can only be special summoned by removing from play 1 light and 1 dark monster in your graveyard. By paying 1,000 life points, send all cards in both players' hands and on the field to the graveyard. Inflict 300 points of damage to your opponent's life points for each card that is sent to the graveyard by this effect. Yo, that's fucking crazy. Wait, both players' hand and on the field to the graveyard. So all the that means like trap cards, everything's gone. Yep, except for this fucking guy. This is the only guy on the field now.
No, him too.
Oh, he's gone too. Okay.
Maybe I should have.
Your opponent's damage.
Fuck.
So
whatever.
It's weird because it's like you're
irrelevant.
Everything to the graveyard in the hopes that this probably wins you the game. This is really fucking good if you're behind. This is insane if you're behind. But then your opponent gets to draw. Can you activate this before your draw step?
No. It is an ignition effect, so you'd have to do it during one of your main phases.
I have no idea how to evaluate this. This is so... Okay, so if you have... Okay, let me just do the math here. If you have 5 in your hand instead of the that is 3,000 damage. So often this is not going to kill them. Like, you would have to have So there has to be a way. This is a very, very hard requirement, I would imagine. You have to have a light and a dark monster in your graveyard? Actually, psych, I thought that was on the board. I'm lying. That's so easy to get. Oh my god. And there wait, no, but there was no way you would pull this card back out of the graveyard.
Well, it can only be special summoned with its effect. So it's kind of like Dark Arm Dragon, where you can only special summon it from the hand.
Okay, so if you remove, I think this card's really good from when you're behind. I'm trying to think of like how good this card is when you're ahead. I guess the logic is you do your stuff, you play this, you get rid of everything your opponent has, and then the game is wiped clean. But then they get the first draw, and I guess maybe they're at a lower life. I have no idea. Like, what the fuck? I guess it really depends. I guess if you make a meta read, this card would be very good if your opponent's holding a bunch of cards in their hand. I guess against a slower deck, like, this is so fucking frustrating to play against. Because you're like, oh, like, I'm just gonna keep this card for removal, and then your opponent's like, no, bitch, you get, like, it's gone, and then you also get bonus damage. That's probably good at hard stuff, but like you said, Yu-Gi-Oh! Games don't play out like that. Yu-Gi-Oh! Games, like, are really fast, but, like, your opponent's probably not gonna have a ton of cards in their hand. Like, neither will for the most part, but maybe I'm completely wrong about that. I guess I'm really asking,
just
like, how good is that effect to just remove everything from the game? And, like, you're virtually starting fresh, your opponent's just at a lower life total.
Yeah, it's just a hard reset.
Then your opponent gets the first draw. Dude, okay, it really comes down to, like, does Konami want this in the game? This is crazy shit. This reminds me a lot of Yogg. And I don't know if, like, Yogg's the best comparison.
I can see why you say that. No, because, like, Yogg ultimately, like, what you're looking for, if I recall, right? You're looking for, like, Yogg to, like, wipe the board and maybe, like, get you, like, a card or two. Yeah. Right? Or maybe just, like, yeah. So, like, worst case scenario, yeah. So I see I see the comparison there.
So, like, the thing about this, I was thinking, like, why would you play this card if you're, like, ahead, but I guess you just never activate the thing, or the life points. You can activate this on your opponent's turn, I'm guessing?
It's only your turn.
What the... Oh, sure, this is fun. You need what? 15's not enough. You're getting close to with 15 cards.
Oh, to like one-shot your opponent? You would need 27 cards.
27, okay. 27 cards!
26 plus Chaos Emperor, because it counts himself.
The card is very good in the sense that if you put everything into the graveyard, you can do stuff with the graveyard. And then you're also just doing a lot of damage to your opponent. I am going to assume that is good enough at some point where they would have to ban this card because of this effect. No idea if it's possible to, like, really OTK someone with this, and I pray to fucking God it is, because that'd be hilarious. I think you're using this effect to stop your opponent from having any resources. It's really good if you're behind, and I'm imagining you're going to put this in a deck where, like, the graveyard is, like, your hand, which is the case in most Yu-Gi-Oh! Games, but, like, you're probably leaning towards it quite a bit here. And if you get to do damage, remove everything your opponent has, and also probably get ahead with something in your graveyard, it's probably good enough. So I would say it's banned because of the play pattern of this card. I'll go with that.
Okay.
This is,
Alright, final answer.
This is the card.
Final answer.
Yeah, that's the final answer. Yeah.
Oh, Raren. Silly, foolish, naive Raren.
So it's bad? Where are you going with this?
You are looking at the reason Yu-Gi-Oh! Created the ban list in the first place.
Oh, really?
Chaos Emperor Dragon, Envoy of the End, is arguably one of the most broken cards ever created. So, a lot of the things you picked up on are correct, but there's several things that you're missing. First of all, I know you don't look at stats on any of these cards. This is just a 3,000 guide that you can basically play for free. So at the very least, even if you don't want to nuke the board, if you just need that extra 3,000 damage to kill your opponent, this is just a free thing you can summon to the field.
Useless.
So there's that. You're correct, like, from the coming from behind aspect, but even if you're ahead, if your opponent's on, like, 3k life, you just bring out Chaos Emperor, activate its effect, nuke the board, and it's probably going to be 10 cards between your opponent's hand and field and your hand and field, so you just immediately win the game if you just resolve Chaos Emperor that way. You were talking about trying to find some, like, dumb gimmicky way to, like, OTK the opponent, and while it isn't technically a way to OTK them, it's a way to pseudo-win the game immediately. Do you remember back in one of our previous videos, the good old Yatagarasu that you thought was an absolutely terrible card? The card that is a 200 attack point monster that if it does damage, your opponent can't draw the next turn.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, the play pattern with this is you would summon a monster, which is either Sangan or Witch of the Black Forest. When either of those go to grave, you can add a monster with 1,500 or less attack or defense to your hand. So you would normal summon one of those, special summon Chaos Emperor Dragon, activate the effect, nuke the field. So neither of you have any cards right now. Sangan or Witch of Wars have the effect that you can add Yatagarasu to your hand. And typically you'd want to special summon the Witch or the Sangan, so you can actually normal summon Yatagarasu. So then you would normal summon the Yatagarasu, attack your opponent for 200 damage, and now they can't draw. Next turn, your turn comes around, summon Yana, attack for 200, they can't draw. They have no cards on the field, they have no cards in their hand. They basically are going to lose the game because they have no way to actually come back from it. So this is the reason that the Forbidden List was created. Also, like, Pot of Greed and everything also got banned during this time as well. But I would say it took this card being released for them to say, okay, we've had enough of this nonsense being in our game for long enough. And that is the legacy of Chaos Emperor Dragon.
Well, I didn't give you the YouTube thumbnail, so sorry.
It's okay. I got a crush card.
That's a very funny card. Very funny. I'm surprised this is the one that actually caused the ban. It's not something that I would truly understand without seeing the combo.
It's a card that basically makes it so that the opponent is physically incapable of playing the game like at all if the combo resolves. And there were very few ways to actually interact with this because I said at the beginning of this video, effect priority existed when Chaos Emperor Dragon was around, so your opponent couldn't even like
wait, shit, surrender is a bad idea. That means I don't get any rewards. Fuck.
So unless they had like a very specific card to stop Emperor Dragon from resolving, there was basically nothing you could do. And so the game's kind of devolved into this this game where it's like, okay, I need to like make sure I can resolve my combo before the opponent resolves their combo. You're playing this like little dance with each other to see who can like Yana lock the opponent before you get Yana locked.
Would this card be playable in Modern?
Interesting you ask that, because you still have the final part of our video in deciding if any of these cards got errated and are playable today.
Can you give me a hint of how many they actually got errated?
There are 3.
Really? 3? That one for sure.
Yo, Drytron.
I think that card's cool enough that they would want to bring it back.
Yes, you are correct. So, Chaos Emperor Dragon, fittingly, was one of the 3 cards on this list that has been errated. And
Let's go.
It's not particularly good.
Ritual versus Ritual.
So that the damage is only dealt with the opponent's cards sent to graveyard, and it's the only thing you can basically do that entire turn. So
I'm gonna get Diviner off of
It's still, like, playable, technically, but I think it's only seen, like, super fringe play. It's never really, ever done anything.
I don't think I've ever seen a card that says you cannot activate other cards or effects during the turn you activate this card's effect.
There's a few of those.
It has to be like really cool cards.
That wasn't who I was expecting.
The case. It's not interesting enough for. I'm gonna go with Royal Prussian.
Okay, that is incorrect. That card's still banned. Final guess.
Different dimension card.
Different dimension. Oh, the return from the different dimension?
Also correct?
Incorrect! That is also still banned. So the other 2 that have been errated are Bryanak, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. Okay. I will show you the new version of that. So how they errated this, they really massacred our boy on this one. You can only use the effect once. When you do it, you have to, you can only target your opponent's cards. So you can't bounce your opponent's stuff. So it still has, like, the effect to bounce your opponent's stuff, which is fine. You can't, like, abuse any of, like, your own cards being bounced to the hand. However, this card sees 0 play, just because it's been power crept, and is just not particularly good anymore.
Okay, makes sense.
And the last one is the one that I think you had the best reaction to, which is the good old Crush Card Virus.
Wait, what?
So they ran the Crush Card.
One was like iconic, right?
Yep, it was iconic, so they errated it. They really massacred the fuck out of this card. So, you tribute the monster. Your opponent takes no damage until the end of the next turn after this card resolves. You still get to look at the hand. You destroy the monsters with 50 times or more attack.
What?
But then your opponent can also optionally choose to destroy up to 3 monsters from their deck and destroy those as well. Now you might think that that's like a negative, but there are so many cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! That have
in order to normal summon Vanity's Ruler.
Something happens that ultimately this would be a detriment, and this was a reason to basically just never play this card, because instead of you getting all the value for activating Crush Card, your opponent would, and
I am in fact just dead.
Made the card like
I can't do anything against that.
So this card, it saw play like once after it was first errated, and then has never seen the light of day ever since. This card is just actually unplayable now.
Okay, that doesn't actually sound as bad, but I guess, again, it's one of those Yu-Gi-Oh! Things I wouldn't understand.
Yeah, it's like, because there are so many cards that just say, like, when this card's sent to the graveyard, or if it's destroyed,
fair enough, yeah.
while it's in the graveyard, like, it's going to do, like, X thing. And so if your opponent gets to just... It's almost like they get to mill 3 monsters out of their deck that have a graveyard effect, right? So why would you want to just let them get free advantage off of this card?
Makes sense.
So like I said, it had a very singular purpose after it got errated, because one deck could play against, like, the best deck during that time, but ever since then, it has never seen the light of day. Card is just actually unplayable.
Makes sense.
Straight garbage.
I get you.
So what do you think of Yu-Gi-Oh's most broken cards?
They're broken. No, they're all fine. Again, you're gonna have to do this question. Every Yu-Gi-Oh card you show me looks totally broken, so, I mean, I'm glad you guys don't have to play with these.
So guys, that's going to wrap it up for another video. I really hope you all enjoyed. Let's go ahead and shout the patrons for all of their continued support. So shout out to Shadow1317, Sim00x3, MPT Play Medolce, Bodo, Cameron L. Smith, The Synchro Guy, Pony Stark, Dan the Man Hoban, Little Fadeleaf, Draconic, Dylan Rare Hunter, JW11860, Brian Dancer of Class 7, Final Daddy, Twinkle Muncher, literally all of the guinea pigs, Cheeks McLafferty, Stolfin Amethyst, Wonder Waffle, MET cancelled by Community soon, cancelled by all committee soon, cancelled by all players soon, Corvain, Absolute Angriest Peacock of the Edison Club, Daniel Howell, and life keeps using solemn judgment on my hopes and dreams. Thank you all so much again for watching, and we will see you next time.
Fair enough. I'm gonna get Vanity's ruler feet beat down. Nice. Oh, Vanity's ruler only locks out the opponents, unlike Vanity's Fiend, which locks everyone out.
The yyyy trio was an iconic group of characters during the early days of Genshin. Up until the release, the playbase at large had no frame of reference for team building, nor did anyone really care at the time. Much of that had to do with the lack of featured 5-star DPS characters. In version 1.0, we had Venti, an off-field character, then Klee, who is the main damage dealer but the poster child of all the issues with Catalyst users in the early days. Then we had Child, who is the DPS and a good one to this day, but back then he was more of an acquired taste and apparently not many people liked him for trying to drown an entire civilization. Chongli and Albedo rounded out 1.1 and early 1.2. So looking at these units, you could say they weren't exactly overwhelming as the choices. And that is where Ganyu, Shao, and Tao came in. Last year I made a video referencing the rise and fall of Ganyu from the greater metagame, and earlier this year I talked about Hu Tao's continuous adaptations to the rise and power in Genshin, because his own story is equally as interesting in light of where he started versus
Isn't it fun to lose to unsearchable monsters?
While he was certainly the least popular among them,
Andrape.
public opinion on Shao has steadily improved over the years, courtesy of his niche receiving actual attention, eventually reaching a point where, despite the
Natasha.
behind achieving such,
I really like
Shao has
Natasha.
cemented himself at the
Unfortunately,
top,
she's really hard to make use of.
most of the game's best performing teams. This has arguably been
Are they gonna steal low?
topics on bars too,
No.
ever since people noticed how much I've been mentioning him in other videos. So without further ado, in today's video, we'll be talking about what happened to Shao over the past 3.5 years. Now, if there's one thing I love and hate about Genshin, among many other things, is that in spite of how simple the game is in regards to mechanics, you literally have only 3 attacks to choose from. Toyo has managed to create a diverse array of unique playstyles. Why do I hate this? Because it makes it all the more frustrating when said playstyles.
None of their fucking shits are considered boss monsters.
That's how I feel with characters like Eula and Ito, 2 units with enormous potential that receive very little, if any, meaningful attention. And for a while, I thought that was Shao too. But first, with the quote-unquote unique attack style, Shao was the only punching attack-oriented unit in the game for an inordinate amount of time. There were a few niche interactions with other characters. I believe one of them was called Dragon Strike Dilu, but given the inability for you to perform a punching attack with a single jump, there weren't that many opportunities to take advantage of them. Punching attacks come with a number of benefits that can make them outperform the usual normal and charge attacks. To start, a large area of effect. Even for non-Fameware users, punching attacks generally have wide area coverage, making them slightly more effective against groups of enemies, especially since the attack originates from the center of impact rather than the direction you're facing. Secondly, punching attacks have higher attack scaling than charge attacks without costing any stamina to perform. It varies from character to character, mind you, but in the case of Shao,
Doing my daily is gonna take a while.
Of a charge attack. Finally, punching attacks are considered heavy attacks, allowing them to deal significantly more damage to shields, both material and elemental, which can come in handy when fighting enemies that have them. These benefits are offset by the major flaw of its activation condition, which is unachievable organically. The minimum height required to perform one is ever so slightly higher than a character's normal jump height, meaning you either have to jump off a higher elevation or find some way to extend your jump height. Unless you're fighting an enemy going constantly downhill, you'll never find a situation where you can pull this off without external assistance. Any means of gaining verticality were often too slow or impractical to where it came at the cost of DPS. For example, Venti's current or Albedo's Geo Elevator thingy could give you the height you needed, but you'd waste precious time waiting for the respective animations to get you to where you needed to be. As a result, punching attacks were written off as gimmicky. Thankfully for Shao, he wasn't in need of any outside help in this department, as Bane of All Evil would afford him 15 seconds of increased jump height, letting him bungee jump on people as much as he wanted. What's more is that he also gained priority animal infusion, increased area coverage, and amplified damage on his normal attacks, making him entirely
This fucking sucks.
a pretty appealing choice in the early days. During version 1, proper team comps were few and far between, on account of there not being that many units, and so most people just picked a unit who can attack a bunch. If that's all there was to it, Shao was a fantastic choice. He had incredibly high base damage, good coverage, long uptime, and some mobility to boot, especially in the air. So while Hu Tao was more combat efficient and Ganyu had better situational applications, Shao was the best in terms of solo usage. In other words, he was a decently strong character in the early days by virtue of everyone being graded mostly by their own capabilities.
This counts as activating a spell.
For the other 3 members of their party, and what semblance of team building did exist back then were largely just 1 or 2 extra units, i.e. Shao with Bennett for a big attack boost and health regeneration to offset the constant loss of HP from his ultimate, and Xiangling because why the hell not? Brute forcing a way through everything was a very sound strategy during version 1, not to mention with Spiral Abyss mostly comprising groups of enemies. Shao's comparatively wider area coverage in tandem with an uptime longer than other DPS units at the time made him an easy option for clean wave battles, a trait that holds true even today. What began Shaw's downfall in version 2 was primarily the existence of actual teams. When compared 1-to-1, his toolkit was every bit the equal of Wu Tao, Eula, Ganyu, Child, Goten, Diluc, etc., if not more so. The problem was he was self-contained to a fault, and it was difficult to find units who directly synergized with him. Not that other version 1 5-stars didn't have any trouble in this department either, but it was especially difficult for him. The animal element is all about reaction synergy, with units like Kasaha, Venti, and Sucrose taking full advantage of the obnoxiously potent set bonus of Virtus and Venera to amplify the whole team. Yes, what sucks is that while PV requires a slow reaction to obtain that 40% shred, it only reduced the resistances of the involved element, not Animo, which I think was a huge missed opportunity for the action. Although that would have made VV even more broken than it already was if it could do that. There was a source of Animo shred in the form of Jean, but unless you were me and lost every 50-50 to her, I don't think many people had T4 Jean, especially in the early days. Moreover, with Swirl being the only reaction with an Animo, that was another potential way to augment Shao's damage taken out. The Cryo element had access to freeze and melt, while the former technically doesn't do bonus damage. By keeping enemies in place and unable to move, it effectively negates the need to avoid attacks or chase after enemies, therefore allowing you to spend more time to attack. Meanwhile, Pyro had Vaporize and Melt, so among the trio, Hu Tao and Ganyu took advantage of their elements being designed more towards offense, not utility. Again, on their own, Shao could more than compete against the 5-star attackers at the time, but when you started to factor reactions and whatnot, that's when the DPS race became challenging. Two of his main teammates at the time, Bennett and Shanling, were also frequently used in other parties, notably the emerging national teams, Raiden National and Child International.
I have no idea what this archetype is.
To put the Pirate Kids on other teams except Shao, because on top of their own personal contributions, they could also make use of additional perks, Child giving Shanling a way to vaporize and Raiden Shogun boosting elemental burst damage with their skill respectively. Also keep in mind, there were more teams for Bennett and Shenling than just those two. In his defense, Shaw wasn't a bad character all of a sudden. The goalpost just moved a considerable distance in multiple ways. Characters now had teams. People were evaluating the strength of a character beyond their own personal effects, instead choosing to see how they contributed towards a collective goal. On that note, reactions getting buffed meant that not only did hypercarries like Shaw have to compete against other hypercarries, but he also had to compete against reaction teams like Taser, who didn't really have their main carry but could dish out damage on par with teams with one. Hoyo was somewhat aware of the need for more specialized support for units that couldn't directly make use of reactions to increase their DPS, as evident by Goro, Kujosada, and Sherpa being Geo, Electro, and Cryo exclusive buffers, decent ones at that. Additionally, they souped up Hu Tao with an extra Hydro follow-up attacker in the form of Yela, turning her party into an extremely effective boss kill. So while reactions were being explored more in version 2, they were still keeping an eye on units who were excluded from them. Sadly, it would be a while longer before Shao got his turn, forcing him to sit through most of earlier version 3 on the sidelines. From 3.2 to 3.2, the hypercarry demographic lost a lot of market share as more powerful reactions came into play, not only having even greater DPS potential than the existing reactions, but also being very accessible. Like I said in my Ganyu video, Dentro was so good that a team of all 4 stars could take on her best.
Holy shit, 60 size.
This was decidedly Shaw's lowest point, which is not that bad all things considered. Even at this time, Shaw was a decent character, and again like other hypercarries, everything he needed from a playstyle perspective was taken care of already. He just needed the numbers to level up alongside everyone else. What made it difficult was that there was nothing he could make use of besides direct number enhancements. He had no reactions to rely on, and there wasn't any artifact set that could give you humongous DPS boosts like VV, Golden Troop, EOSF, and so on. Vermilion was the best he could find, and to his credit, gaining 64% bonus attack is nothing to scoff at. However, it's a far cry from getting 60% skill damage or 40% element shred. That's one more thing. Part of what made VV so overpowered
what the hell is this archetype?
And used it to benefit the main attacker while they carried their own set. So overall, there was a lack of options to give Shaw more power in place that elevated his opportunity cost higher than people who could also benefit from it. That is until Farazan. So a mistake I made in my Why Don't Play Shaw video that I rightfully called out on was when I said Farazan didn't change his situation all that much. I admit that wasn't entirely true. With the benefit of hindsight, Farazan is what people wish Goro and Sada could be for their respective elements. Understanding that Shaw had to be improved in several areas for him to not only justify being used, but for the sake of role consolidation, they effectively made it so Farazan did basically everything, as in there's not a single box Farazan doesn't check off when it comes to hypercarry augmentation. When trying to buff a hypercarry, you can't just make a unit who gives them like 40% bonus damage and call it a day. They have to have a lot more than that to make it worth the investment. And it's a good thing they made the payoff worth it because next to Sada, Farazan was by far the most expensive hypercarry support to build, since you had to go C6. Although unlike Sada, you had a pretty compelling reason to go the distance on Farazan. To summarize what she brings to the table, Farazan's skill enables her aim shot to provide a small amount of grouping, not on the same level as NT or Kazuha, mind you, but better than nothing for sure. Then her elemental burst provides both increased damage and Dynamo Shred to the tune of 32.4 and 30%.
Shit, now I can't get Saurabis out.
Percent, of course, but last I checked, 30% is higher than 0, and again, roll consolidation. Continuing off of that, her reboard passive also tacked on a bonus to all forms of animo damage, adding even more power to Shell's rotation. The real icing on the cake is her C6, providing an extra 40% crit damage to animo damage and allowing
I can activate triple tactics. Never mind.
In totality, Farazan gave bonus animo damage, bonus crit damage, animo shred grouping, and a bit of extra on top just for good measure. Compacting so many buffs into one unit, more than the number of buffs given to Shell, the fact that they all came from one character meant you could still bring 2 other supports with you. If Farazan was missing even one of those buffs, she would be a far less effective unit. So in essence, even though you have to get 7 copies of her, the payoff is so good for Shell that it's worth it. Like imagine if Goto gave all those things unconditionally, as in you weren't forced to bring a 3rd Geo character, Toa would instantly be that much better because it frees up a party slot for another damage support. This would come in great handy for Shell later on. Farazan was a fine addition to his party. Now to bring him back to meta relevance, assuming you were okay with putting up a prestige playstyle, but
they surrendered.
There being so many viable
their connection failed.
Damage, it was still kind of a hard sell for him. He needed just a bit more. Farazan took care of many critical things, but there were still a few loose ends to tie up. Fortunately, his luck would continue entering version 4. The shift in focus to hyper carries and divergent gameplay was perfect for him. After spending the past 2 versions buffing up reaction teams to high heaven, Boyo turned their attention back to the more neglected parties. Just like how there were a massive boost to Tal, the advent of Farina and Xianyun may have been even better for Shell. Farina was the first character with DPS augmentation that could match the full duration of Shell's burst, not to mention her fanfare stacking mechanic working perfectly with Shell's HP loss. Combine that with her incredible 75 to 124% damage boost on the ult, and she gave him even more power than Bennett ever could, especially when including her own DPS on field. When Xianyun got released a couple versions after, she was the ideal companion to go with Farina courtesy of her party-wide healing. And though her ultimate ability to give you these jump heights kind of redundant on Shell, who can already do it on his own, her passive talents directly enhancing punching attacks were an obvious match made in heaven for the Pogo Stick boy. Most importantly though, being able to bring 2 animo supports gave Shell an abundance of energy, which was still an area he greatly struggled with. Normally your elemental skill is responsible for battery, but during his ultimate, linear scatic wind cycling doesn't generate particles, so even though Shell's burst had only a 3-second downtime, the challenge was actually getting the energy for it. Xianyun took care of that one final loose end. The team of Shell, Farazan, Farina, and Xianyun currently ranks among the top 5 most powerful in the game because there are practically 0 drawbacks to this party. He can do crazy AoE damage, making any wave clear chambers a non-issue thanks to lasting long enough to go through multiple waves of enemies before gassing out, and even if he does, he can get back up again really quickly. He does humongous damage to bosses too on account of the raw power behind all the buffs and his own base damage, so he's an effective boss killer and wave clear. He basically does everything. They addressed every single one of his shortcomings: lack of energy, insufficient numbers, spell set lasts the full duration of his burst, animo shred, everything except maybe interruption resistance. But when he's in the air 24/7, you can't knock him out of punching attack animation anyway. That's a moot point. Shell was the perfect example of the kind of stuff you can achieve on a character like him if you just give him the chance. They gave him that chance, and he more than exceeded expectations. Now, if only they could be this consistent with every other gimmicky character in the game, that would be appreciated. A lot of other quote-unquote mid-tier 5-stars can be more than competitive the same way Shell can, but regardless, I'm glad they gave him the TLC he deserved. I thought they completely forgot about punching attacks before Farazan came out, to be honest. If you guys enjoyed the video, it would be great if you left a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter @LarsFair, join my Discord server, and check out my other What Happened to videos if you haven't yet. Until next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.
Maybe this guy's an achievement hunter or something. And there's some kind of achievement for increasing your life points. Huh. Yikes. Oh. Oh, doesn't this suck? Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm just gonna disconnect this for now, I suppose. The hell? That was weird. No! Don't tell me it's happening again. No, there's still electricity actually, though. Okay, no, the brownout happened temporarily. But I don't think I'll be able to reconnect in time. Yeah. Electricity died for like a second or two. Internet is apparently back now, but can't connect. Ah, there you go. Unlucky. Pretty sure that's still counted towards my dailies. I couldn't activate the trap card. I never found a good opportunity to use it. Dang it. I actually kinda stood a chance there. Although that depends on what they could do on main phase 2 after activating evenly matched. But we'll never find out. Only they will know now. Wait, I'm going first? elemental heroes. Okay, they had another. Why am I never able to use Sauravis' special summon negate? Like, come on, that's why I put you on the field. Okay, I would have at least killed low. Sauravis would be a good hit too. Maxi. He's back. Interesting. Damn. I'm not gonna need triple tactics anymore, I suppose. Yeah, sure, let's special summon her. Really, that didn't count?
The usage rates for the latest Spiral Abyss are out. Technically, they've been out for a while, or a little bit away, and they tell us some very interesting things about how the meta is shaping up, how people are using their characters, and there's also a lot of ways that you can easily misinterpret these statistics to tell you something that's not really there. So I'm going to go through the whole list and compare and contrast my experience to some of the really quite weird things that we see on this list. Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. As per usual, it's very important to remember that the percentages are not total percentages used, but percentages by ownership. That means for Zhongli, 93% of the people who had Zhongli used him in this Abyss. That doesn't mean he was used for 93% of all Abyss clears. That being said though, Zhongli is ridiculously hot, and anytime people wonder why I put him at the very top of tier 1, almost in tier 0, this is why. Yes, maybe he's not the ceiling choice for too many teams, but he is the ceiling choice for the best DPS in the game, no less. And even more than that, you don't need the ceiling choice to clear the Abyss. Oftentimes, you want the most comfortable choice that you could possibly
Well, at least
get.
I'll be able to trigger a trap card.
The very best, he's often going to give you something that's the most consistent, which can be more valuable than the very best when you don't need the peak performance possible. I would say that this Abyss, also along with what many others have been saying, is that it's slightly on the easier side. And whenever the Abyss is extra aggressive or a little bit weaker, Zhongli
Never mind.
rise. In addition, the second half is obviously very good for teams.
I can live with
the Gravity Machine enemy, as well as the Centaur. Both of these have sort of a Geo shield, and you really want Geo to be able to counter them. So whether that's going to be Zhongli, Navia, or Chiori, that's going to buff their usage and people are going to use them more. I would say that it's a little bit surprising that Chiori is not actually used more, and I know that 47% is very high, but remember, this is only the percentage of people who actually wished for Chiori, and so I'm surprised that Chiori isn't being used 70% of the time, because this Abyss is just so good for Geo. I think, unfortunately, Chiori is a little bit of a miss, and it seems like she's a bit underpowered. Hopefully they have plans for powerful construct characters in the future, but right now, this isn't too good of a percentage in my opinion. But Farina being second makes a lot of sense. I think it's hilarious how Novelet's best team is almost always the entirety first percentage. The first 4 spots are just Novelet's best team. I just think that's absolutely hilarious. And it just shows that even though like Novelet isn't the absolute peak of power, there's other teams, lots of teams that do more single target raw DPS. So easy to play, he's so consistent, he has such insane AoE that he's always just a peak. Plus, he can max out Farina's stacks without needing a healer, just from his own healing. So he's just insane. Kazuha makes a lot of sense. This Abyss is very good for Kazuha. Obviously, Kazuha is used on Novelet's best team. This Abyss is very good for Kazuha, so it makes sense that he's higher up. There are more and more characters that have great team options that don't have Kazuha, which I've been talking about a fair bit. But the fact that Novelet's best team still uses Kazuha means that most people are going to play him on Novelet. That's really good. That's going to keep Kazuo relevant probably for a good long while. Bennett's still very, very high. This Abyss isn't, like, technically particularly great for Bennett. There's lots of mobile enemies. The PMA and the Hydro Chalupa, neither of them are crazy for... Like, Bennett is good with Bennett. Shangling is really good for the Hydro Chalupa. The PMA, you can generally one-rotate with a good team with Bennett, so it makes sense, but the first half on the second chamber, not that good for Bennett. The third one, not that good for Bennett. Like, it's alright. It's a decent Abyss for Bennett, but it's not like a crazy good Abyss. So to have him all the way at 70% usage, especially considering there are a lot of non-Bennett teams such as Novelette, this basically tells you that most people are using Novelette on one side and Bennett on the other. Plus, everyone basically has Bennett, as he's been giving for free multiple times. He's in the shop, he's on a ton of banners, he's on lots of recent banners. So the fact that everyone has him and most people are using him, it really does go to show how much of a dominant meta force Bennett still is. Baiju is the most common replacement for Zhongli for Novelette teams, but the other thing about this Abyss is even if people are using Baiju with Zhongli, or Baiju instead of Zhongli on Novelette teams, you're still probably going to use Zhongli on the second side for the Geo stuff, since he pretty much solos the second side. Like, not, like, it's very good for the Talupa because it does a ton of damage to you, so having Zhongli is really consistent. And then the veteran arithmetic enhancer mech, also Zhongli just basically solos, like, he doesn't solo, but he solos the shield. And he's very, very helpful versus the Legaticus Golem.
Doesn't work.
It makes sense. Navia, very good in the second half. She loves single target, she loves boss rush, and Geo is so good in the second half. Navia is queen there. Arlecchino can easily solo the second half as well. And I don't mean solo, but she can carry the second half. I guess I should say solo. I should say carry instead of solo. But she easily carries the second half, especially if you just pair her with Zhongli on any team. Mono Pyro especially is just gonna destroy the second half. Chiori, Nahida, I guess Hyper Bloom with Zhongli on the second half, maybe Nilu on the first side, probably pretty great as well. Yeah, you can just beat the Perpetual Mechanical Air with Nilu, and then Nilu does great against the rest of it. Yelan, this is one of her worst Abysses overall, because the first half is very AoE, and then the second half, it has the Hydro Tulpa. So it's not crazy good for her, but it's still good, and Yelan's still broken, so she's still there. Emily just doesn't have a crazy ton of teams. I expect Emily usage to go up when Wilani, Kinich, and other DPSs that use Emily more regularly are here. One team that I've been trying out that I really, really like is Raiden, is using Emily in place of the Hydro on the Raiden national team. So use Raiden, Emily, Bennett, Shangling. I really, really like that. Raiden's surprisingly high, to be honest. I really like Raiden, obviously, but it's surprising to see her so high, especially so much higher than Chlorand and Yaimiko. I think Chlorand is great this Abyss, so that's always kind of surprising. I'm wondering what people are using, what teams people are using with Raiden. Does she show up? No, she doesn't show up on any of these. Seeing Raiden Chevreuse makes sense, almost always in the second half. Raiden National. So yeah, Raiden National, Raiden Chevreuse. Makes sense. They're not using...
Oh yeah, I forgot I had Machine Angel
Ritual
Ritual.
on the first side, Navi on the second side. Yeah, Hyper Bloom with Geo on the second side. Yelan with Geo on the second side. Butao double Hydro.
Hey, I can actually use this.
Yeah, this all makes sense, especially the top teams. Oh, Ayaka Freeze. Ayaka Freeze making quite the comeback. I don't like Freeze that much this Abyss, because I don't like it versus the Rimpounds, because they usually get unfrozen and move away, but it does work if you're a mad lad. Shenhe having the highest usage rate out of all the cryos is crazy. Look at how, look at the horrible spot Cryos in. That's insane.
It's alright.
Also, the tiers are totally arbitrary, by the way. This doesn't mean it. Like, I wish that they didn't even put
You're like, if I can't beat them, I'll at least beat up. Oh no, wait, they can only target because this face up continuous.
Percent usage.
I forgot low cat beat.
Charlotte's higher than Shenhe. I mean, it makes sense. Charlotte's a lot more useful. And like, even though she's like up here, she's twice as more almost as Shenhe. But anyway, Xingqiu, pretty high usage, honestly. The nice thing about Raiden National on the second side is even though the Tulpa is immune to Xingqiu, you still vaporize
that's everything
on the Tulpa, and that makes up for the fact that Xingqiu doesn't do damage, and then he has that nice damage reduction, so you're less likely to be one hit if you're bad at dodging, so that's nice. Kuki, we talked about it. Shenyan, pretty high usage rate. Between Navia Plunge, I guess, and Zhao Plunge for the first half, it makes sense that, it's only 24%. She's pretty high on here. The percentages overall will keep getting lower, except for apparently Novelette, because there's so many more teams that just coming out. Like, there's so many good options. Yeah, like Emily being 40% is actually really high. But she's fairly, I mean, obviously this is brand new. She was brand new, especially at the time
Draco
that this
Slayer.
came out. But like, when there's so many characters, the percentages are gonna go down. There's so many good team options. Oh, Risley! I totally missed Risley! All of you guys are just gonna be so mad at me for missing Risley. No, but Risley's right there. He's ahead of Shenhe. Y'all can calm down. You can go delete your comment. They're escaping me. No, Risley's up high. It makes sense, you know, Risley with Farina bench. It's going to be good on